20 years after the initial Jurassic Park fiasco, its successor, Jurassic World, deals with a bunch of genetically enhanced dinosaurs escaping. Well, you know how the saying goes, if at first you don't succeed, do it again, even bigger.
The good.
While the effects won't ever feel quite the same as they did in the original Jurassic Park, I think the effects done for this movie were pretty good. Also done effectively was capturing the right tone. Despite contingency plans in case some dinosaurs should ever get out, it's obvious that these are very primal, very powerful creatures, and thus, you kind of get a feeling of helplessness the whole way through. The actors in this movie also do a pretty good job. My favorite character is Chris Pratt, not just because he's someone who sort of understands the dinosaurs as equals as opposed to trying to feel like he controls them, but because it's Chris Pratt. He's very charming and charismatic and funny. The day we see a bad Chris Pratt movie is gonna be a sad day. The most important thing is when all of these elements come together and do something that is very hard to do in a sequel. Capturing the spirit of the original movie, while at the same time updating the groundwork from which it was initially built. In other words, this movie understands perfectly what made Jurassic Park great, which is understandable since Steven Spielberg produced it, but at the same time they make just enough changes in all the right areas to make it feel like a fresh experience again.
The iffy.
There's a point in this movie where a series of fake-outs are executed. And while it did start to become noticeable, which can be an issue, its purpose was to further suspense, and I think it always did a good job at that.
The bad.
It can be said that Jurassic World suffers from a few problems that the original Jurassic Park did. Not just because the two movies share a lot of things that start the conflict in both of the movies, or a lot of things in the Jurassic World movie feel almost thematically identical to Jurassic Park, but in this exact same hypothetical world that existed in the first movie, someone thought, well, yes, that was a big freaking disaster, but let's try it again. And that brings up questions not only within the hypothetical world of like, who in the hypothetical world would approve this after the original Jurassic Park was a complete disaster, a lot of people killed. But it also brings up questions narratively when you're thinking about this story is, why then would we need to make this movie at all? To which I answer because it's a lot of fun. And then of course there are just the stupid decisions made in survival situations by the characters where you just want to yell at the screen about what they should be doing instead. The child actors in this movie don't really do a terrible job, but I will say that the child actors in the first movie were much more compelling characters than these two. And associated with these characters is a subplot that doesn't really get a whole lot of mention, we never really get to see closure on, and is mentioned a couple times in the movie and then never again. Ultimately, it just comes across as them fabricating internal character issues and not really giving them the weight that they need. It makes them feel like cliff notes to the overall story, which honestly they are, in which case, why have them?
The verdict?
To my understanding, this sequel, Jurassic World, is meant to be a very direct sequel, even if it takes place 20 years later, that is going to relatively pretend that Jurassic Park 2 and 3 didn't exist. Since I haven't seen Jurassic Park 2 or 3, that's very easy for me to do. So, how does this measure up as a sequel to the one and apparently now only Jurassic Park? Well, I think Jurassic World does what a sequel is supposed to do. It updates things, it gives you a new story, a fresh experience, and changes some circumstances, but at the same time, it also maintains the spirit of the original, and that can be very tricky to do. So kudos to them for that. This is Detective Steve, and if your local theater has Oreo churros, you should give them a try, because I had them for the first time when I watched this movie, and they were pretty good. Also, go see Jurassic World and stuff.